Content warning. This story contains elements of horror and may not be suitable for all readers. The lockdown. The world had come to a standstill. A deadly virus was sweeping across the globe, infecting millions and killing thousands. Governments had no choice but to impose strict lockdown measures to contain the spread of the virus. It was a dark and uncertain time for all. Emma had been living alone in her small apartment for weeks. She had lost her job due to the pandemic, and her savings were running out. The days were long and lonely, and she spent most of her time watching TV or scrolling through social media. She was desperate for some human contact, but the lockdown made it impossible. One day, while Emma was scrolling through her social media feed, she came across a post from an old friend. The post was an invitation to join a virtual community for people who were feeling lonely during the lockdown. Emma was hesitant at first, but the thought of having some company was too tempting to resist. She clicked on the link and joined the community. The virtual community was a lifeline for Emma. She made friends with people from all over the world and spent hours chatting with them every day. They shared their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. Emma felt like she had found a family, a place where she belonged. But then, something strange started to happen. Emma noticed that some of her new friends were disappearing. They would stop logging in, and their social media accounts would go silent. Emma tried to reach out to them, but there was no response. She assumed that they had lost interest in the virtual community and moved on with their lives. One day, Emma received a message from one of her friends. The message was cryptic and sent chills down her spine. It read, "Don't trust anyone. They are watching us." Emma was confused and scared. She tried to reply, but the message bounced back. It was like her friend had vanished into thin air. Emma couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. She decided to investigate and started digging through the virtual community's archives. She found some disturbing posts, messages that hinted at a sinister agenda. She couldn't make sense of it, but it was clear that her friends were in danger. Emma tried to warn the others, but they dismissed her as paranoid. They told her that she was reading too much into it, that it was just a harmless virtual community. Emma knew that they were wrong, that there was something sinister going on. She was determined to get to the bottom of it. As she dug deeper, Emma discovered that the virtual community was not what it seemed. It was a front for a secret organization that was using the pandemic as a cover to carry out a nefarious plan. They were recruiting people from all over the world, promising them a better life in exchange for their loyalty. Emma was horrified. She had stumbled upon a global conspiracy, and she was in the middle of it. She knew that she had to act fast, but she didn't know who to trust. She was alone, and she was scared. Then, one day, Emma received a knock on her door. It was a man in a hazmat suit, telling her that she had tested positive for the virus and that she needed to come with him to a quarantine facility. Emma was terrified, but she had no choice but to comply. The quarantine facility was a nightmare. It was a cold and sterile environment, with no windows or natural light. Emma was kept in isolation, with no contact with the outside world. She was given medication and subjected to daily tests. She had no idea how long she would be there. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's health deteriorated. She was weak and malnourished, and the medication made her feel numb and disoriented. She had no idea what was happening outside of the facility, and the virtual community was silent. Then, one day, Emma received a visitor. It was her old friend from the virtual community, the one who had sent her the cryptic message. He was no longer in the hazmat suit, and he looked different. He was pale and gaunt, and his eyes had a strange, distant look. He told Emma that he had been recruited by the secret organization, that they had promised him a cure for the virus in exchange for his loyalty. But he had discovered that they were experimenting on people, testing a new vaccine that had deadly side effects. He had escaped from the organization, and he was here to rescue Emma. Emma was relieved to see her friend, but she was also scared. She had no idea who to trust, and the thought of leaving the quarantine facility was terrifying. But her friend was persuasive, and he promised her that he would protect her. Emma agreed to go with him, and they made their escape. It was a risky and dangerous plan, but they managed to evade the guards and slip out of the facility. They ran through the empty streets, with the sound of sirens in the distance. They finally reached a safe house, a hidden underground bunker where a group of rebels were planning a resistance against the secret organization. Emma was introduced to the group, and they welcomed her with open arms. The rebels had been monitoring the secret organization for months, gathering evidence and planning their next move. They told Emma that the organization was planning to launch a global attack, using the pandemic as a cover. They had created a deadly virus that was even more dangerous than the one that was currently sweeping the world, and they were planning to release it into the population. The rebels were determined to stop them, but they needed Emma's help. Emma was hesitant at first, but she knew that this was her chance to make a difference, to fight back against the darkness that had consumed the world. They worked tirelessly, gathering intelligence and making plans. They infiltrated the organization, gathering evidence and sabotaging their operations. Emma was at the center of it all, using her skills and her determination to bring down the organization that had caused so much pain and suffering. It was a long and difficult fight, with many casualties on both sides. But in the end, the rebels were victorious. They had stopped the secret organization, and they had saved the world from a global catastrophe. Emma was hailed as a hero, a symbol of hope in a dark and uncertain world. She had fought back against the darkness and emerged victorious. But she knew that the fight was not over. There were still dangers lurking in the shadows, still forces that were working against the common good. But she was ready to face them. to fight for the future that she believed in. The lockdown may have ended, but the fight for freedom and justice had just begun. As the dust settled, Emma found herself with a newfound sense of purpose. She had been isolated for so long, but now she was surrounded by people who shared her ideals and her desire for a better world. Together, they worked to rebuild the shattered remains of society, to create a world where justice and equality were the norm. It wasn't easy, of course. The aftermath of the pandemic had left deep scars, and there were many who were still struggling to survive. But Emma and her fellow rebels were determined to make a difference, to create a world where everyone had a chance to thrive. As the months passed, Emma watched as the world slowly began to heal. The streets were no longer empty, and people were starting to venture outside again. The fear and paranoia that had gripped the world for so long were starting to fade, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. But Emma knew that they couldn't let their guard down. There were still those who opposed their vision of a better world, still those who sought to profit off of the suffering of others. And so, she and her fellow rebels continued to work tirelessly, fighting for the future that they believed in. Years passed, and Emma watched as the world changed around her. The scars of the pandemic slowly faded, replaced by a new world that was more just and more equitable than ever before. And though the memory of the lockdown still haunted her, Emma knew that it had been worth it. She had fought back against the darkness and emerged victorious, and the world was a better place for it. In the end, Emma's story became a legend. She was remembered as a hero, a symbol of hope in a time of darkness. And though the world would never forget the horror of the lockdown, Emma knew that it had been the catalyst for a brighter, more just future. As she looked out at the world that she had helped to create, Emma felt a sense of pride and satisfaction. She had made a difference, and that was all that mattered. The lockdown may have been a horror story, but in the end, it had been the beginning of a new chapter in human history.